Are you ready to become a better investor? This is Andrew Stotz of A. Stotz Investment Research presenting our academic style research. This piece of research is related to the 10 worst days. Now, previously I put out a piece on the 10 best days, meaning what would be the return or what would be the loss if we missed the 10 best days. And I got a lot of comments from people saying it was helpful, they liked it, they read it. And also what I started to get was some questions about this point. And that was, could you take a closer look at what would happen if you could miss the 10 worst days as opposed to the 10 best? Same answer here, same question that we got here and also here. So started to see a lot of feedback on this, so I decided to expand this research from looking at what I was looking at, the 10 best days and the clustering of best and worst days, which you can see on the website BABI Now, Become a Better Investor Now. So what I wanted to do is look into this particular question about missing the 10 worst days. So we're going to use our academic style research format, which is to ask a question first, then review prior research to understand what we know, formulate a hypothesis that we're going to test, then select our data set. In this case, we're going to look at the US, but we're going to look at others over time, and also consider our method of how we're going to do our calculations, review the results, and most importantly, for the benefit of all of us, is how do we apply this to make better investment decisions or become a better investor? So what was the question that we wanted to ask? What impact would missing the 10 worst days in a 10-year period have on terminal wealth? And we review the research that's been done on this, and this research was on the 10 best days. We had a piece of research by Johnson and Kruger in 2004 saying avoiding the 10 worst days would enhance your returns by 39%. And missing both the best and worst days would increase annual return by 15%. In 2009, Estrada said missing the 10 best days in the U.S. would result in a 206% higher portfolio value compared to just a passive buy and hold. Well, it would be great if we could say that we could miss those 10 worst days, but it's highly unlikely. Now, let's look at what Estrada also said here. 10 days, missing the 10 worst days in emerging markets, you got even better returns, and this is because of the volatility of emerging markets is much higher. So let's look at our hypothesis. Our hypothesis is that missing the 10 worst days will significantly increase terminal wealth over a 10-year investment horizon. Our data set, well, we gathered the time series of data, daily data for the U.S. market for 10 years. Then what we did is we calculated the percent change of each day and identified the 100 worst daily return days. We invested in the market but removed the 10 randomly selected days out of 100 worst days. Now this is where our research differs from some of the others, where we would say that what would be the probability that you would miss either the 10 best or the 10 worst days? Very unlikely that you would be so lucky or so unlucky. Therefore, we're going to randomly select the 10 best and the 10 worst out of the 100 best and the 100 worst as to get more realistic. So on those days, we're going to assume a 0% return on those 10 days, and we're going to repeat this process 100 times to look at an average, a max, a minimum terminal wealth. What we really care about is kind of the average. So what we can see if we look into this, and we compared it to a buy and hold strategy. If we look into a timeline of what we're talking about, is imagine that at day 0, you have a worst day. And what we've done is said the investor sells his full position at the closing price of the prior day, and they reinvest at the closing price at day 0. So they're out for the whole of day 0. Now let's review our prior research on the 10 best days. And what you can see of this is that the market had a long-term return, a terminal value that went from 100 over 10 years up to 173. But if you missed the 10 best days, you would have only gotten a return of 125. Basically, you would have lost 66% of your total return because of missing those 10 best days. Now let's remember remind ourselves that the market had a terminal value of 173. Now we're going to switch to the 10 worst days, and here's the finding from our research. What we could see is the 173 is still there, and what happened was that if you missed the 10 worst days, then you would have a return of 249 in your terminal value, meaning that you've increased your total return by slightly over 100% because of missing the 10 worst days. We can see a distribution of the terminal values, assuming what of our 10 worst days and what are the different potentials. And in fact, you could gain as much as 200%, tripling your principal, but we want to look at the average. So now, the action. What we can learn is that missing only the 10 worst days during a 10-year period increases your terminal wealth significantly. On average, you gain 100% more compared to buy and hold. And also, we know that this gain is even higher than if you missed the impact of missing the 10 best days. So what we can mean by that is that the 10 worst days are more painful than the 10 best days are successful. And that's an interesting one when you think about the concept that Daniel Kahneman has been talking about the impact and how emotionally a loss is so much more painful. Well, it's also just more painful because of the fact that the market falls so dramatically. And so if you can perfectly time the market on best or worst days, well, great and good for you to do it. And you'd certainly want to be out of those 10 worst days. Unfortunately, that's a darn hard thing to do. So what I would think is that for the average investor, it probably makes sense to stay invested over that time, unless you've got some strategy that can get you out of the 10 worst days because you are going to really perform. So that wraps it up for becoming a better investor now. Remember, with us, you're going to know it first. You're going to get access to additional research and articles. You'll get a free membership and newsletter. So to join, go to BABI now.com/join, and we'll see you there.